Hi, I'm Doug from Dynamic Computing, and welcome to episode 77 of 10-Minute Amiga Retrocast. This week, I'm going to install and review the Commodore A2088 Bridgeboard that came out in 1987. Now, the Bridgeboards were interesting things. Commodore made one with an 8088 chip, which I'll be showing today, a 286 chip, and a 386 chip that allowed you to put them inside any of the big box Amigas, 2000, 3000, 4000 series Amigas, and actually gave your Amiga the ability to have a PC computer right inside of it running any PC software that you could throw at it. Now, why would we need a PC in our Amigas, especially something like the 8088 processor, the XT class machine? Well, the truth is, PCs were very popular, especially in the United States, but all over the world, back in the mid to late 80s. They had a good percentage of the business market share, not so much the home market share. And Commodore wanted to be able to provide PC compatibility with their Amiga line. Now, they started out a few years before with a sidecar that worked in the Amiga 1000 machine, which is a slap in the side component. Here's a picture that was literally an XT computer that plugged right into the side and talked with the Amiga, and they were able to share some components. Now, believe it or not, in 1987, when this particular Bridgeboard, the XT class Bridgeboard, came out, the XT was still a fairly popular computer. It was fairly well sold as an entry-level PC. Now, the 286 was the mid-range machine, and the 386 was the power machine that was, way up here, kind of like buying an i9 today. Yes, they exist. Do they sell them off the shelf at Office Max? No, but they exist and you can get them. Now, the 8088 was a curious CPU. It came out in the late 70s. It was a 16-bit CPU with an 8-bit data path. Now, compare that with the 68000 in the very, very first Amiga, which is a 32-bit CPU with a 16-bit data path. Huge difference in capabilities and performance. The PC line was popular for business class software, though. You put a PC in your business if you were running a business. It's just the way things were done, right or wrong. The XT was still a popular machine back in the mid to late 80s, and a lot of people still had them from when they bought them in 83, 84. They used them for several years. So it made sense for Commodore to come out with this particular product. Now, back in the mid to late 80s, I was still a teenager, okay? But even I saw that PCs back in the days were worthless, okay? They were expensive. They were underpowered. They sold for thousands of dollars. And back in the mid-80s, they didn't do that much more than something like a Commodore 64 did. Maybe you have a higher resolution screen, not the same number of colors, not the same performance per megahertz. It didn't make any sense to my teenage mind to spend thousands and thousands of dollars on an XT, or up to like $5,000 or $6,000 on a 286 for something that was just a green screen or an amber screen and could do word processing and spreadsheets. Didn't make any sense. Now, in my opinion, PCs were basically an overpriced joke all throughout the 80s, and it wasn't until the 486 chip came out that they actually became worthwhile. With just raw brute force, they could finally do what my Amiga had been doing for almost a decade by that time. Windows 3.1 was a joke. Windows 95, better, but still a joke. It wasn't until OS2 Warp and Windows 98 that really the operating system even caught up to what I'd been doing for years. But back to the topic at hand, the 8088 Bridgeboard. I picked mine up a few weeks ago from Don Namron on Facebook. I also picked up this cool 2 megabyte Amiga 1000 expansion. Pretty cool stuff. Now, I thought that I would use the XT Bridgeboard on my Amiga 3000 because it only has 2 ISA sockets, one of them for the Bridgeboard, one of them for an add-on card. And when you're dealing with something like an XT Bridgeboard, you don't need a lot of extra stuff. For the MS-DOS based programs, CJ graphics are going to be okay, monochrome graphics are going to be okay. And that second ISA slot, I can just put in like maybe some serial ports and a hard drive controller, something like that. You know, that's going to be fine for a basic system. I'll save my 386 Bridgeboard for my Amiga 2000 since it has like 4 ISA slots. Then I can throw in multifunction card, audio card, VGA card, and just expand the daylights out of that thing. Now, let's take a look at what came inside the box. First of all, it came in the actual box that it came in back in the late 80s, which is kind of cool. Commodore Amiga 2000 PC emulator kit. Dan keep, it says. Keep it, Dan. Now, inside the box, we've got some cool stuff that I'm going to show you. Now here, we've got some floppy disks. This is going to be on 5 1/4 because this came with a 5 1/4 inch drive. We've got MS-DOS 3.3, Amiga Utilities, GW Basic Interpreter, and a Bridgeboard boot disk that the previous owner had come up with. It also comes with some good manuals. It's got a nice Bridgeboard manual that goes over installation and a little bit about the software setup. This was really written in the time of Workbench 1.2 and 1.3, so some of the newer conventions aren't in here. We've got some books. Commodore PC, Personal Computer, MS-DOS 3.2 User's Guide, even though it comes with 3.3. I think there might even be an addendum for what's new in 3.3. Now this is an actual full-featured manual all about MS-DOS 3.2, how to use all the commands, how to get around in there, how to do this, how to do that. Now why did Commodore have these? Well, Commodore made PCs too for years, and it was actually a fairly good-sized percentage of their business actually making PCs. And so they had lots of these books around. Now that's a separate item here. GW Basic Interpreter, all about using BASIC with DOS 3.3. Kind of cool. And a 3 1/2 inch disc with Amiga software. Now it also comes with a floppy drive. In this case, a 360 kilobyte, 5 1/4 inch PC compatible floppy that matches the Amiga 2000's faceplate colors. This one has a label on it saying it was made in, there it is, 9 of 1989, which means it's a pretty recent one. Now this has a head protector in there. I'll keep that for one of my 1541 drives. This particular drive sticks a little bit when I put a device in here. This sticks and I kind of have to pop it up, so it's going to need a little lubrication to bring it back to life properly, but it does function. Next in here we have the Bridgeboard itself. Get that out of the package and let's take a look. Now this is the actual Bridgeboard, and you see it has the Zorro 2 compatible slot right here, and it has an 8-bit ISA slot here, and the Bridgeboard bridges those two worlds together. Now take note, this is an 8-bit slot. It does not have the 16-bit extension like the 286 and 386 Bridgeboards do, because this CPU data bus is only 8 bits wide. That's important. This is a 4.77 megahertz Siemens CPU right here. We've got the Commodore BIOS. This is the latest one, 3.6.1 from 1990. So I think they upgraded this. This should be the 512 kilobytes of RAM. In my humble opinion, they should have had 640K of RAM on here, just maxed it out, but that's neither here nor there. This is a socket for an 8087 math coprocessor, which I have one of them that I'm probably going to order from eBay here soon. Here we have our floppy header. This will handle either 360K 5¼ inch drives or 720K 3½ inch drives, just fine, but only one drive. You can't use one of the cables that allows for 2 different drives. This is just one drive at a time. But you can add a second drive right here. Externally, you put on a standard external Amiga floppy drive, and it works just like a 720K PC drive. No problems at all. Lastly, we have just a couple of jumpers. These control the video display. The newer Bridgeboards, all the video is handled through software. This one, you actually jumper it either for monochrome graphics or for color graphics. This is right now set for high resolution color graphics, 640 by 200 in up to 4 colors. Now, let's get this little guy installed in the Amiga 3000. Now the Amiga 3000 has 4 Zorro slots, and 2 of them here and here are in line with 16-bit ISA slots. I'm going to mount the board in the bottom slot simply because I want to be able to easily access the second slot if I want to add anything to it. It's going to completely ignore and bypass this 16-bit extension here and only connect to the 8-bit ISA slot. I'll go ahead and get that hooked up. You see that fits in there nice and snug. It's a full-length card, so it goes all the way to the back of the case. Next, we want to hook up the 360K 5¼ inch and our drive. Now, where are we going to put this little sucker? The Amiga 3000 only has 2 3½ inch drive bays. There's no way this is going to work. But we do want to use it to get some software loaded in the beginning. So we're going to set it on top of the power supply. Now the first thing we're going to want to do is install the Amiga portion of the software. Now it comes with version 2 of the Janus software, Janus, that is designed to talk with the 8088 or 286 Bridgeboards. But because I have a 386 Bridgeboard, I actually have version 2.1 of the Janus software. You can also find this online. This works fine with the 2088 Bridgeboard and adds a few more features and some newer versions of the software, so I'm going to use this. So you install this. It has a standard Amiga installer. I always install it on my Workbench drive, but you can install it wherever you want to. Once this is installed, you're going to have a folder called PC. And in the PC folder, you see you've got PC Color for displaying your new PC in full CGA color. You have PC Mono for doing it in monochrome. PC Reset sends a reset command to it. The LPT program allows you to redirect the printer port on the Amiga so the PC can use it. Let's look at PC Prefs here. Now, because this is a XT Bridgeboard, there's not a lot you can do with the BIOS. It's not like newer BIOS where you can go in and change hard drive configurations and floppy configurations. There's almost nothing you can do. So this has just a couple little settings telling you where you can load the Janus handler in memory, whether or not your monochrome or color display is enabled, and that's about it. When you are ready to go, you put your floppy disk into the floppy drive and you launch the PC Color program right here. Just double click it. And what that's going to do is come up with this PC display. And if you're a PC user from back in the day, you will certainly recognize this display. Counting up the RAM, slow as a darn turtle. Now it's going to boot off of the DOS disk in the floppy drive. Now you'll notice here, Janus handler, it's already detected that the Amiga side of things has the Janus software loaded. And it boots right up via floppy to MS-DOS 3.3. You can go and do all of your standard commands in here, look at everything normally. It's going to read the floppy disk. Boom, isn't that exciting? Now, I had already mentioned that you can add a regular Amiga floppy drive and hook it up to the back of the Bridgeboard, and it will see it as a 3½ inch 720K disc. Works just fine as drive B. I'm going to take my newer version of the PC Janus software. This is the PC side of the Bridgeboard software. And I'm going to put it in the 3.5-inch drive, and we're going to be able to access that as drive B. Let's go into the Janus directory and take a look at what we have. The A-Disk software allows you to create a virtual drive right on your Amiga hard drive. A-Mouse and A-Mouse 2 and A-Mouse 3 are different versions of mouse drivers for both DOS and Windows. A-Read and A-Write allow you to transfer data between the two platforms. A-Time grabs the time and date from the Amiga. And then here, under J-Disk and J-Link, what we have here are programs that allow you to have a hard drive on the PC and share that with the Amiga. Now, one of the most critical things is making a virtual boot drive for the Bridgeboard. What you do is, back at the Amiga side of things, we open up a command prompt and we type make AB and we give it a name like drive C. It's going to ask for the number of heads and it's going to ask for the number of cylinders. Now, the manual has a pretty good description of the number of heads and number of cylinders you should do for particular sizes of drives. Like if we wanted to make a 32 meg drive, we do 4 heads, 17 sectors, and 963 cylinders. Once we do that, and we'd hit enter here, once we put in our numbers and hit enter, it creates the virtual drive, and then the PC side of things is going to see that drive. Let me show you. We're going to switch back to the PC. From here, we open up our Janus disk, and we type A disk, which is very similar to F disk. And you see here, it shows us the partition that we created. This is a 32 meg drive. We can change the drive number, change the partition status, create a new partition inside that drive, or delete it. So it gives you some control over what to do here. What you're going to want to do, though, is run the actual fdisk command from the boot drive. Fdisk being a DOS command, and you're going to want to create a DOS partition. Now, I already have, so we're just going to display the partition information. I've already created this. See there, it shows you the C drive, 963 cylinders. You would create a brand new one right here. So you would have chose option 1 to create it. And then after that, you've created it, you would format C: with /V/S. And the /S command should copy over all of the bootable information for your drive to make it a bootable disk. Once you format your drive, you want to copy all of the information over from your boot disks. So from your DOS 3.3 disks, you'd put disk 1 into the 5.25 inch drive, and you would create a directory on C. So you would use md C:DOS to create a folder called DOS. In this case, I already have one, so I'm going to call it DOS2. Now, you want to copy everything from your system folder on that 5.25 inch drive into that DOS subfolder in order to get all the commands over there. So we would basically go copy system /** to C:\DOS. In your case, DOS, just DOS, but in my case, DOS2. And it's going to go ahead and copy over all the commands. Now remember, this is a PC, so you can't do anything else while the drive's in use. It completely monopolizes 100% of the operating system. So go read a Computes Gazette, go watch A-Team on your 19-inch TV or whatever you did back in the 90s or 80s. Oh, but wait, this is an Amiga. So we can just go right back to the actual Amiga side of things and multitask to our heart's content. Everything still works beautifully on the Amiga side of things, as you can see. Now, a couple of things about this setup. First of all, using the 5¼ inch floppy drive is a little bit of a pain in the rear. Things that you find online, you're going to find a lot more of them available for a 720K 3½ inch. So you are absolutely able to swap out the floppy on the internal drive and use an actual Amiga floppy drive in there. So if you've got a spare, or if you've got a 720K PC drive, hook that up instead of the 5¼ It works just fine. I just use the 5¼ to originally get everything set up and tested and make sure it works. Then I put a 3½ inch in there, and that's going to fit fine in my Amiga 3000. Second, with your auto booting virtual drive, like I said, keep it to about 32 megabytes. You can go larger, but then you get some performance hits on that from what I understand. But you also want to add some extra buffers. So you can either use HD Toolbox and add buffers that way. Give yourself 500, 600, 700, 800 buffers, depending on how much RAM you have, and add that to the drive that the auto boot virtual drive is on, and it increases the performance dramatically. I'm able to get about 175 kilobytes per second data transfer on my virtual drive, which, to tell you the truth, on an XT class machine, that really wasn't all that bad. That was pretty normal, or maybe even a little bit above normal on an XT class machine. Now, I've also cheated a little bit here. Since I put my 3½ inch drive on there when I was testing this out, I went ahead and I loaded DOS 5.0 that I had on 720K floppies. I played around for a couple of days with DOS 3.3. Oh my God, it sucks so bad. DOS 3.3 was out from about 1985 when the Amiga came out. And that was the standard until like 1988, okay? Maybe even 89. And it was horrible. You could open up the command line on an Amiga 1000 running Workbench 1.2 in 1986. And it was so far superior to DOS 3.3. It was unbelievable what it could do. How you could go back and look at old commands that you've done, the capabilities, the power of the commands, just left 3.3 in the dust. 5.0 added some high memory functions that allow you to use extra memory on like 286 machines. We don't do that on an XT machine, but it also added cool features like an actual editor, you know, like Ed, that's been around since the beginning on ours, an actual full screen editor for editing your auto exec bat and config sys, and it added some other cool utilities and just enhanced it so you could actually do things like see what directory you're in when you're using your computer, instead of it just saying C:\/ no matter what folder you were in. It actually shows you what folder you're in. Get DOS 5.0. Now, speaking of memory, this XT Bridgeboard came with 512 kilobytes of RAM. The maximum that an XT normally could access was 640K, theoretically up to 1 megabyte, but you have to jump through some serious hoops to even get up to 1 megabyte to work on an XT machine. PCs up until Windows 95 came out were still living with a 640 kilobyte conventional memory limitation, and they had differing tricks and software hacks and hardware configurations to fool software into using memory beyond 640K. And I'll tell you what, it was confusing, it was incompatible, it was a nightmare. You figure you got an Amiga in 1985, all right? 512K of chip RAM. Cool, I want more memory. All right, get yourself a ComSpec 2 meg adapter, slide it into the side. Get one of the Spirit branded adapters for internal Amiga 1000 use, stick it in there. Guess what? The Amiga sees it. The Amiga knows what to do with that memory. It says, oh, look, I've got fast memory. Let me start putting the stuff that I know works in fast memory into fast memory. Now the Amiga runs faster. Where a PC, you got to configure your auto exec and your config sys, tell it what kind of memory it is, what little portions of it maybe you can use below 1 megabyte, and pray that your software actually supports it, and a lot of it didn't. It was a nightmare. Even a 286 very seldom could handle more than 4 megabytes of memory, and even then it barely knew what to do with it. It wasn't until the 386 came out and Windows 3.1 and even up to Windows 95 that PCs actually started utilizing memory the way that they probably should have 10 years before. Back to the Bridgeboard though. It was super easy to get programs onto your Bridgeboard, because you could use either the 5 1/4 or the 720K floppy. No problem at all. You can just get a PC disk, stick it in there, you're in like Flynn. There's also some Janus utilities called A-Read and A-Write that allow you to transfer files back and forth between the Amiga and the PC side of things. You just go to the directory, the Janus directory, do A-Read, and then whatever folder and file on the Amiga you want to pull over, copies it right over. Same thing with A-Write, copies it back right over to the PC. That point is kind of moot now, because Amigas, even my Amiga 1000, can read PC disks in a heartbeat with cross-DOS that's included with Amiga OS 2.0 and above, and is available for other operating systems too. They read PC disks just fine, so you can literally just copy them right over on the Amiga and then boot them right up in your PC and your Bridgeboard. You can print to your printer just fine. It sees the Amiga's parallel port just fine, so you can actually switch it over and print right on your printer. Since it is a fully blown XT machine with 512K of RAM, say it recognizes the parallel port, tells you it's got 16K of CGA memory. It's just a normal full-blown XT PC. You want even more from it? Get a card for your 8-bit ISA slots. And remember, it needs to be 8-bit with this card. The 286 and 386 version can use 16-bit ISA cards fine. VGA cards to display 256 colors, hard drive controllers for dedicated hard drives, serial and parallel ports, no problem at all. They're still all available on eBay or maybe from your local retro shop. So if you need your PC for, what can you use them for? Spreadsheets? And then an Amiga for, fun, creativity, games, video, and actual uses that you'll actually enjoy doing, you could have gotten yourself a Bridgeboard back in the day, and you would have had the best of both worlds. Now, back in 1988, okay, mind you, this is 1988, Amiga had a beautiful Workbench 1.3 available for it, graphic user operating system, where you could use your mouse, you could click, you could drag windows around, you could drag things back and forth between windows. Been working beautifully for years. Same with the Mac. You could multitask with it. You could have Deluxe Paint running while you're formatting a floppy disk and then open up a word processor. No problem at all. You got a mega RAM, no issues. So PCs back in 1988 outsold Amigas without a doubt. So they must have had a killer graphics user interface for PCs back then. They had years to work on it since the Mac and the Amiga came out. Must have been awesome, huh? Well, no, it kind of sucked. The Windows operating system that did come out in 1985 with version 1.0, and by 1987 and early 1988 they were up to version 2.0. In version 2.0, in 1988, they just got the ability to overlap windows in Windows. You know how since 85 we've been taking one window and moving it on top of another and go back and forth? Yeah, they couldn't do that. They didn't have that feature. Pretty cool for Windows, huh? Not having, a windowing feature. So in 1988, some PCs did ship with Windows, with a which is a memory-hungry, single-tasking front end for MS-DOS, which is not much more than a task manager like DOS shell was. But it worked on the XT. And in 1988, virtually everything was DOS-based, almost everything. You could get a few little Windows programs here and there that might work, but it was all DOS programs. And Windows was just an ugly front end to launch these DOS programs. Now, XTs were still popular in 1988, believe it or not. They were the low-end machine in 1988. 286s were the mid-range machine. They were still like $1,500 to $2,000 or more. And 386s were the creme de la creme up there at $2,000 to $3,000 to $4,000 for a 386. And the best that they could do is single tasking DOS programs. So can we experience the awesomeness that was Windows 2.0 on our XT Bridgeboard? Yes, we can. Now, in theory, DOS 2.11 should work on an XT Bridgeboard, but I was having memory issues with it. It would never load properly. So I found a copy of Windows 2.03, works just fine in even 512K of RAM. Now, I have some issues with the A-Mouse software. It does not seem to be quite working at all with my Windows installation, so it'll just be keyboard-based, but it works. Now, one little caveat. When you copy the Windows image files from your computer over to your Amiga and then onto the 720K floppies, the Amiga takes one file on disk 1 that's called setup.inf, and it thinks it's an .info file, an icon file for the Amiga, and it renames it as you copy it over. It renames it setup and ~1.inf. So when you go to install Windows from disk 1, you get an error message. You can't find the configuration file. It took me like an hour to figure out what on earth was going on, that it just renamed a file. I just went onto the A drive in the PC, renamed the file setup.inf, boom, cracked right off. But let's take a look at Windows 2.03. So from our C prompt, we just type WIN after we install Windows from floppy, and we are presented with Microsoft Windows goodness. Look at this beauty. Look at this. Booting up. Now don't let this mouse pointer here fool you, because it does not do anything with Windows. That mouse pointer right there doesn't do anything with Windows at all. That's just the mouse pointer that controls the Amiga PC side of things, the Amiga Windows side of things. That mouse pointer right there is the Windows mouse pointer that I can't get to work with the A-Mouse software. I'm still playing with it. So this is Windows, okay? This is a file manager. That's all it is. Windows 2.03, you can see your hard drive on here, and you can use your mouse or keyboard to go around to different things. Like here, we'll go into the GW Basic. Oh look, let's run GW Basic, and then it will launch a DOS program. We don't need a PIF file. And let's see if we have enough memory to actually run this program. Yay! We are in GW Basic now. And that's what Windows will do. It will launch DOS programs. But let's take a look at some actual Windows programs on here. We're going to go into the Windows folder. Look, we've got a calculator. Ba-da-da-dum. Look at that! A calculator! Woohoo! We've got a calendar. These are the Windows programs. Come on, you can do it, baby. You can do it. Maybe it will launch the calendar. Yes! We've got the calendar up and running. It only took 5 minutes to launch. Now this program is actually pretty good. This is the Windows Write program. It actually does a pretty good job. It handles some decent fonts, and it actually looks okay in here. Now, to be honest, I think that the people at Microsoft in the mid-'80s must have been horribly embarrassed at their creation. I mean, they must have just looked at the Mac OS and the Amiga OS and just, this is the best they could do, just a front end for DOS that has a couple of little utilities that might work for it. I don't know. It's no wonder that Microsoft was in talks with IBM to offer OS/2 as the OS of choice for PCs, and that was leagues ahead of Windows. Let's go down and open up a file. hey, we've got a Windows file with maybe a 286 or a 386 and a couple of megabytes of RAM. Maybe Windows would actually be usable. Maybe you could have a couple of DOS programs, not multitasking, but task switching with Windows, where it would minimize one and hide it away and reload it into memory when it was ready to be used again. But you'd be spending thousands of dollars on that. Now, we've been doing this kind of stuff since 1985 and doing it 1,000 times better. The Amiga did it better. The Mac did it better. The Atari ST did it better than this. They must have just felt so bad about it. And I'll tell you what, even GEOS or the Commodore 64, I think, was a better interface than this particular interface. So if you ever wondered why Amiga users and Mac users were so darn smug back in the 80s and 90s, this is the reason. I mean, you had PCs beating the pants off us in the market with no video, bad graphics, no or little audio, no personality, no soul. And we're sitting here with our machines. They're like, yeah, we can do 10 times as much as you for a third the price or a fourth the price. What's wrong with you people? Who knows? PC industry and Microsoft won through brute force and money, not innovation. This video is, I know, it's turned more into a PC bashing video than it was a review of the Bridgeboard. I really didn't mean for that to happen, but it's just hard not to. I actually really liked my 386 Bridgeboard back in the day. I got a lot of use out of it. Love it. I'm going to do a review on it soon. And I really do like the 2088 Bridgeboard. It does its job, and it does its job perfectly. You're taking a computer, sticking it inside another computer, and having them both run at the same time, and you can switch between them literally at the click of a button. Look how fast that is. If I want to look at this screen, look at both of them at the same time, I can do it. They're both running at the same time. If you have a program in here processing, doing a big calculation, you can switch over the Amiga. The Amiga's running at full speed. It doesn't care that the PC is running in there. Works perfectly together. Now back in the day, in 88 or 87, you could have picked up an Amiga 2000 HD with 2 megabytes of RAM. You could have picked up an XT Bridgeboard that ran about 90% of the software that was out there and most of the business software, and you still would have paid less than you would have for a well-kitted out 286 with 2 megs of RAM and a 60 megabyte hard drive. You'd paid less. And you would have had a full Amiga that can actually do fun things and a PC to do all the boring things that your boss makes you do. And remember, the 68,000 CPU in an Amiga 2000 is better in most ways than a 286, all right? It's a 32/16-bit CPU, where a 286 is just a 16-bit CPU all across the board, all right? Most 286s, as a matter of fact, almost all of them, they couldn't handle more than 4 megabytes of RAM no matter what you did. Our Amigas, 8 megs of RAM, no problem at all. You want to go higher than that? Sure, get an accelerator, you're golden. But do you need an XT Bridgeboard? Sure, why not? We're not going to use them for any real business purposes now. That's not our purpose here. But for having fun, experimenting, seeing what they can do, why not? You know, I was thinking the other day, you could get a fax board for this XT, and you could stick it in there and have the PC running in the background, receiving faxes all day long, printing them out, whatever. That would have worked great back in the day. You could have used it for some scientific programs, maybe that the Amiga didn't have, some things you needed to do some calculations on. Let it run. Let it do its thing. Put a math coprocessor in there. Let it do its thing. You get back to working on the Amiga, would have been perfect back in the day. Now, I do recommend that if you look for a Bridgeboard, find a 286 or a 386 Bridgeboard. They're more powerful, and the extra bit of memory on it, even the 286 Bridgeboard, will make Windows 2 run a little bit better because it can see the expanded memory and it can swap things out a little better. So get yourself a 286 or 386 Bridgeboard. You'll be happy. Now, this also really goes to show you how simple PCs were back in the day. Here's Commodore. Okay, let's take an 8088, let's put some glue logic chips on there and some RAM, stick it in a card, we got a computer. These were computers that just a few years before were selling for $4,000. And this 8088 chip, they were like 10 bucks back in the day. They were making a killing on these, places like IBM was. Commodore turns around, puts it on a board, puts it in their machine, sells it for a couple $100. They're good. I would like to take this time to thank my wonderful patrons. You can become a patron too on patreon.com/10mark for as little as $2 a month and make this prestigious list that you see scrolling by you here. Now, I would have loved to have done it on the XT and put the list on there, but I probably would have ran out of memory. I would also like to point out this absolutely beautiful t-shirt that I'm wearing. This one is from my friend and your friend Vicky, aka Pixel Vixen. Now this shirt, absolutely 100% guaranteed to improve your love life, speed up your Amiga, and make your Windows 10 machine crash proof. 100% guaranteed or no money back. I'll have the links in the description for both her UK and her United States Amazon site so you can order one of these t-shirts for yourself. They're really awesome, Vicky. Please like and subscribe. Tell me below in the comments the XT software, the XT class software that you think I should try on this. Is there anything cool out there that I really need to get my hands on and try in DOS? I'd love to try it out and see how it goes. If you've got cool Bridgeboard utilities that you use, tell us all about them. Share the knowledge. There's some cool stuff out there. But until next time, this is Doug from 10 Minute Amiga Retrocast, signing out.